a formula for change that has a legendary reputation around the world. And when it's combined with the concept of the tipping point, it makes for a really compelling story. Everybody is changing everything, everywhere, every day. And if the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, well, the good news is our world is no longer crazy. And if we're not crazy, then what are we? What's going on with all this sanity that we're experiencing? And how can we thrive in an ever-changing landscape? Well, I'd like to share with you these two formulas. And these two formulas relate to the notion that really, crazy is less about the changing world that we're experiencing, and it's more about how we go about changing. You see, the processes by which we change, if we keep doing them the same way over and over again, expecting different results, well, that is the definition of crazy. So there's this formula, and it has been developed over many years, and most recently the concept of S was added, and it's D times V times F times S. Notice how the formula is multiplicative, and that is that if D, V, F, or S are 0, the whole thing cancels out, and it's no longer greater than R. And let me take you through this formula and tell you how it works as we go about making transformational change at an individual, at a group, at an organization, and at a whole social level. Change begins with a level of dissatisfaction with the current state that we're in. It relates it creates conditions for hope as well. And we can be satisfied and happy. So satisfaction and happiness are not the same concepts. We can be satisfied with our level of happiness. We can be dissatisfied with our level of happiness. On a team or project or working towards a social issue or a big problem or an opportunity, we've got to be dissatisfied with where we are in order to get there. We can be happy, but we just need to be dissatisfied with where we are. And sometimes we're dissatisfied with our level of unhappiness. And there are also people who are completely satisfied being miserable. And even if you take that frown and you turn it upside down, that thumb is still going down. They're not even satisfied if they're happy. So you got that in place. You got this dissatisfaction with the current state. And then create an ennobling vision of what you yearn to become. Vision leads to inspiration. And inspiration is all about directing people towards something that they yearn for, something that's ennobling. There was a research study conducted with a bunch of accountants, about 300 or so, and they took 150 and put them in one big room and tables, sitting at small tables of 8 people each. And then they put them in another room, similarly, in tables of 8. They had the same issue to work on. In one room, they instructed the accountants to solve a problem. In the other room, they instructed the accountants to design a preferred future. In the one room where they were solving the problem for that issue, despair emerged. There was a lot of blame for pointing fingers. There were band-aid solutions, very short term, and there was a serious drain of human energy. In the other room you walk in, there's hope. People are designing for a future that's ennobling. There's ownership. There's a long-term solutions. And there's an enthusiasm and heightened energy. So you get the D, the dissatisfaction with the current state, and you get a V, an ennobling vision of something you yearn for. Well, that's not enough. You need first steps, concrete actions to take in the short term that will create commitment to moving forward. And the commitment is really key. The key to commitment is taking action in the short term. The action steps need to begin tomorrow. They need to begin next week. And they need to be in the short term, like the next week, over the next 3 months. Take the dissatisfaction with this ennobling vision and concrete steps to take in the short term, and that's still not enough. We have so much work on our plate, and there's so much going on in our world around us, and so many competing demands. People need to have in place the necessary support and structures to help ensure follow-through. And so a lot of times the biggest challenge is putting in place the necessary support to ensure that the trajectory from the change initiative continues in a positive direction. D times V times F times S must be greater than the resistance to change in order for a transformative shift to occur for me personally, for an individual, for a group, for an organization, or a larger community, or even country, or group of countries, mind you. So you get a burning platform, and this is an interesting story. And there's an engineer on the platform, the last one left, and there's a helicopter flying around videotaping, and at some point that the engineer jumps and survives, and the reporter talks to the engineer later and puts a microphone up to the engineer's face and says, well, why did you jump? And the engineer looked and said, well, it got too hot. Sometimes the fear of what we know is better than the fear of what we don't know. And what DVFS does is it helps us get clear about our dissatisfaction. You know, I'm not happy on this platform. It's on fire. It's hot up here. It's really getting hot. A vision. I want to get home. I want to get back to work. I want to be with my loved ones. This is what I yearn for. First steps. I can jump and land in that water down below. Supporting mechanisms. There's boats and people around to rescue me and get me out of that shark-infested water. If I have clarity around those four things, it will help make that fear of the unknown less fearful, so that that the platform, as it gets hotter, I have the formula now in the favor of real transformative change. Now take it and multiply it times all the disparate groups and different people who all need to come together to address a major issue in an organization or community. And you've got these different groups bringing together a variety of different talents, and they all have their own DVFS experience. And how do you create a collective DVFS to move everybody in that direction? Well, the tipping point helps to address that. Malcolm Gladwell writes, the tipping point is that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. I like what Harold Jarsch says. He says, how can those of us not in senior roles influence those who are to embrace the idea that we're in the network era and to act to create post-hierarchical organizations, particularly cross-organizational connections in which you've got social capital in amongst various groups and stakeholder groups that don't necessarily have to work together, but they care about some social or some critical issue that must be addressed. Trust is key to bringing all of that together. And it's less about a pitch, and it's more about an invitation to be a part of something. To be a part of something and bring all these different groups together takes time. And you know, there's the old adage, you got to go slow to go fast. I like what Simon said here. He said it's better to go slow in the right direction than to go fast in the wrong direction. So to do that, there's 3 levels of engagement to create that tipping point. And you've got leadership of different organizations. And you got this top leadership group, and you got to somehow get them connected individually and collectively around the DVFS, so that it moves to this mid-level group of people, the change teams and the steering teams and the various different groups that are working to organize people to implement, that are right there, like that mid-level management, the mid-leadership groups. They have to have their own DVFS experience. And oftentimes that mid-group is the critical lever that has to influence top leadership to have their own collective DVFS, so that mid-level group can then have the authority, the resources, and support, the S, necessary to then engage the larger system so that it can have its DVFS experience and move to that tipping point that creates real accelerated change in an efficient manner. So I close with this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.